Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of the LemonAid podcast with me, Jyoti, taking you through a soulful space, a place for soft landings and quiet strength during life's heavy squeezes. Now, if you listen to the first episode, you'll know that one was called Behind the Mic. So if behind the mic was the wide-angled view, think of this one as the close-up. A story of what really happened when the dream met the detour, because sometimes life doesn't go to plan. You know the feeling. Doors close, timelines shift, and the road we're travelling on just turns to quicksand. Yeah, this is that story. The story of what happens when a leap of faith collides with life's curveballs. It's a journey of really just losing the map and navigating some high stakes in the messy middle of what actually became a life-changing chapter. A moment when everything that I thought I knew was flipped on its head. It was meant to be the dream, the American dream. But dreams have detours, so why don't you relax, sit back and fill up your cup as I pour some of life's lemons into lemonade. So let me take you back to May 2019. I had been through an 18-month process trying to secure my US visa. So I will never forget the moment when I was approved for my own green card. It was a dream that I was overwhelmed with excitement after all of the paperwork, the medicals, the fingerprints, the full bureaucratic marathon. It arrived, and there it was in official print. Legal alien of extraordinary ability. And you'd think that the words extraordinary ability would be what stood out, and they did kind of, but no, it was the word alien, a legal alien at that. My mind just raced, flashes of E.T. phoning home and that song by Sting that was just crooning through my head. I'm an alien, I'm a legal alien, I'm an Englishman in New York. So even before I arrived, I remember standing outside the new US Embassy in London. This huge, vast glass fortress of mirrored walls and sharp edges. It really looked like something out of Batman, I guess. Yeah, it was all shadow and steel. It was intimidating and untouchable, and I felt it was already testing my courage, and I hadn't even crossed the pond yet. It reminded me of this forum that I saw where it said that New York will chew you up and spit you out within 6 months. So if you can survive that long, the city starts to embrace you. Well, I felt like I'd failed by day 6. Nothing made sense. But looking back now, I see that those early months were just part of an initiation, some early stripes that I had to earn, and not by becoming less British or less Indian, but by learning how to weave those two things together into the rhythm of being a New Yorker, to bring the tea and the tenacity, the roots, but also there's some risk. A way to find softness in belonging with some sharp edges of becoming. And maybe that was where the real story of any great reroute began. So now fast forward 4 months. We're in September 2019. With a suitcase stuffed with my dreams and winter coats, I was ready to set out and arrive at the Big Apple. Before I even boarded the plane, plot twist, Airbnb cancelled every single booking across the city. No address meant no entry, and with nobody to call in the US, panic set in. And then, like a lifeline, my friend in Canada connected me to a couple she knew in Manhattan, who, out of sheer kindness, offered to accommodate me for the first few nights. They were lovely. It was a decent start. Felt like a blur of gratitude and jet lag. And then my host family were flying in, and just like that, I needed to find somewhere. But no problem, I thought, I'll grab a hotel. Every hotel was booked out for this UN convention. So there I was, a Brit, melting in Manhattan during what felt like the hottest September on record, trudging 30,000 footsteps a day in my winter boots and dragging suitcases across the sidewalks. The city was loud, jackhammers, horns, sirens, this chaotic symphony that just matched my inner storm. I was lost in the subway and I figured I'd meet the son of a receptionist I had just met in London for a coffee. A familiar accent. It was just nice to have a taste of home. And all he had to do was ask me how I was holding up, and that was it. The floodgates opened. The tears streamed down my face. I was exhausted. I told him I was stressed and I was hot and had nowhere to stay tonight. And what he said next was, well, just a moment that really became special, a moment that repeated itself in my years being here. He looked at me kindly and offered me some hospitality of his own and just said, it's okay, you can stay with me. A stranger became a sanctuary, and under normal circumstances I would not take somebody up on that offer. However, in a foreign country, when you don't know anybody and you're trying to just understand how life works, it was a lifeline. So there I was, drying up my tears in this coffee shop, relying on the generosity of strangers. I felt like I'd already failed. All that preparation, all the planning, somehow I already felt like I just didn't have it together. But as I sat there, I was humbled because beneath the embarrassment, I felt this quiet grace come in. That weekend, I learned something that I've never forgotten. I had crossed an ocean, chasing a dream, and what I found first wasn't a home or a job. It was kindness that caught me mid-fall. The reminder that we don't always arrive the way we imagined in this nice, neat package with a bow. And that's the thing about soft landings. They don't often resemble success. They show up in borrowed bedrooms, in kind eyes across coffee cups, or in the quiet generosity of somebody who just says, hey, don't sweat it, you can stay with me. And looking back, that first few weeks felt like squeeze after squeeze. Eventually I saw a story beginning to unfold. It took grit and it took grace. Life was unraveling, but there was also sweetness that was waiting in the mess. Once I'd found my footing, or at least a place to rest my suitcase for more than a few days, the next mission was finding somewhere to actually live, somewhere I could call a home. But apartment hunting in New York, that is not for the faint of heart. And rooms that smelled of damp dreams and dim lights. Tiny corners masquerading as studios, cockroaches in hallways, grim bathrooms. My budget was vanishing faster than my optimism. So when the realtor agent suggested that I bump up my budget by another $700, I challenged him. And he was right. It got me a window that actually opened, a floor that didn't tilt, and a building that felt safe after dark. So, reluctantly accepted that this new place was going to stretch me financially, emotionally. The rent I had planned to spend was about 30% below what it actually cost. I had no US credit history. I'd only just moved here. Had to pay 6 months rent up front, which was pretty much half of my savings gone before I'd even got the key to the new place. I signed the lease and my hand trembled seeing the responsibility of being accountable for that much rent in a year. Commitment and surrender. A moment when I realized I wasn't just visiting, I had arrived. And even if the walls were bare and the rent was brutal, at least this home was a place I could call my own. It was just this relief, a first lesson in what it really costs to bet on yourself. And for the first time in weeks, I could exhale. I began unpacking boxes, curtains were half hung, a single lemon candle was flickering on the counter. A small victory in a place that demanded so much so fast. And it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. A home from home. And then life shifted again. It was the night of Diwali, the festival of light. The city outside my window glimmered with fireworks and headlights that were weaving through the streets. I remember feeling grateful that somehow, after all that chaos, I'd at least landed. And that's when the call came, that my grandfather had passed away. The air changed, and in that moment, light was met with loss. The joy of finding a home collided with the grief of losing a piece of my own family, my first grandparent. He was the quiet root of our family, steady and unwavering. And here I was, thousands of miles away, in a city that never slept, learning what it meant to hold celebration and sorrow in the same hand. That night, as the candle burned low, I realized that sometimes And the very moments that can almost break you can also be our biggest blessing. The night he passed, something in me shifted. Grief arrived, not as a wave, but as a giant weight. I was still unpacking. I'd only just begun to breathe again after a few weeks of incredible stress. And now all I wanted to do was go back home to say goodbye, to sit beside my family and back to familiar rhythms of mourning, the warmth of shared silence, the smell of incense, the sound of my grandma's voice. But I couldn't. I'd only just arrived. My visa, my savings, my new lease, they all tethered me here. So I found myself grieving alone, oceans away from people who understood the shape of my sorrow. In the days that followed, I grieved, and I grieved alone in a city that didn't know my story. Our stories were running in parallel, two journeys across oceans and generations, both chasing a better life, both rooted in courage and sacrifice. And in that recognition, my grief began to shift. It wasn't just loss anymore. It was almost like an inheritance. Every street I walked seemed to echo his story, my grandfather's, because he too once left home, leaving India for England. And now here I was, his granddaughter, tracing a very similar path, albeit in a different time. The irony was not lost on me. In building this new life, I was living the very dream that he had worked hard for. The city around me, it pulsed with life, with sirens, with laughter, with light. But inside, I felt suspended between worlds, home and away, joy and grief, arrival and loss. And yet somehow in that in-between, I began to understand something deeper. There was sweetness, even if it stung. I learned that grief didn't care for calendars or contracts. It arrives when it wants, and it lingers longer, far longer than you would like. And somehow, between tears and to-do lists, I realized that this was the essence of my new life now. Messy, full of collisions and tugs of the heart between the personal and the professional. Voiceover auditions, commercial castings, theatrical submissions, the pictures, the reels, the self-tapes, the subway ride. I was doing the rounds, getting out there, climbing the unspoken ladder of new talent in a new town. The hustle was real. I found a small but mighty team who believed in me. Each door that opened felt like a win. The thrill of possibility, the rush of stepping toward a long-held dream. And just as things began to move, the world stopped. A small virus had made its way into the city, and in what felt like a blink, New York, this city that never sleeps, well, it was forced to take a nap. Restaurants shut down, subways emptied, Times Square was dead. Auditions stopped, studios closed, all this momentum that I'd been building and the energy I'd been buzzing off, it just started to pause. It felt like a strange twist of fate, moving my life for this big American dream to land here with all this opportunity, but then stop. Strikes, fires, AI, tariffs, you name it, it's all been happening. And over time I realized something far deeper, that I had crossed oceans to chase a dream, only to watch the tide slowly drift back towards the very shores that I'd left. I used to have a very clean timeline for my life. By this age, I'd be in this job, and then this version of myself would show up and everything would just arrive on schedule. That was the plan. But the reality, well, that was far messier. Jobs fell apart, opportunities shifted, seasons changed. Before I was ready, life just kept handing me delays and detours. So, what did I gain from all of that, you're thinking? Every city will test you. New York just does it louder, and that 6-month survival myth? Well, it turned out to be true, but not in the way that I expected. Because it didn't chew me up. It shaped me. It taught me how to hold my own while holding on to my roots, how to navigate chaos with calm, and to bring the warmth of community into a place that rarely makes time for small talk. The squeezes were real, but so were the rewards and the growth. And sometimes the only way to find your rhythm in a new world is to let it stretch you. Because the stripes we earn in life, they're hard won. And they're also proof that we keep showing up, even when it doesn't make sense. So I made a choice to take the next small step. Not even the most impressive one, just a small one. But all those tiny steps are what brought me here. So the delays, they didn't take me off path. If anything, they built it. So this is our coaching corner. I'd like to think about what happens when the world changes faster than your plans and how easy it is to feel disorientated, as if the map got redrawn and your permission was not part of that picture. In my coaching work, there's a very simple framework that we often use. It's something I return to, and it's called the GROW model. And in true LemonAid fashion, I'd like you to think of this as a moment when we prune that lemon tree so that new fruit can start growing. It's not about forcing direction, but it's about finding clarity and what you do when the map shifts. So in this moment, let's pour into something that can be practical. Grab a pen and paper. We're going through the GROW, the G, the goal. Ask yourself, what were you hoping that you would be doing with your life? Where does it still feel true? Sometimes change brings evolving needs, dreams grow, people change, and maybe what you once wanted isn't what's relevant now. You may have wanted excitement and adventure when you were younger, and now you crave purpose and freedom and peace. R, what's the reality? What is happening in your world right now so that you can decide what's in your control and what's not. Naming that reality is not giving up, but it does create clarity. And then there's the O, the options. When life narrows your plans, how can you widen your perspective? What possibilities have you not considered yet? Who or what support could you find to create softer landings? And then there's W, the way forward. What's one small step that you can take this week that aligns with where you want to be, not just where you've been? It doesn't have to be big. So we can look at the GROW model in practice and apply it to the story that I've just shared. So if we look at the G, that's the goal. What was my original plan for this move? Well, it was pretty simple. It had a clean timeline. I would land, I would find somewhere to live, it would be affordable, I would book some acting jobs, life would be on the up, it would be great. Nothing would change back in England, of course it wouldn't. That life would just stay exactly as it was meant to. And then there was reality. R, what actually was happening, the interruptions, the setbacks, the derailments. Global pandemic, who saw that coming? The industry shutdown that I was working in. There were Hollywood strikes, fires, AI. Rents doubled in my neighbourhood. It became the most expensive neighbourhood during COVID. Jobs that vanished, opportunities that fizzled out, admin delays, life transitions that quite simply just knocked me off my feet. Every detour, I felt like I was failing. And this is where emotional honesty lives. Naming that discomfort, confusion, the loneliness, the guilt. So that's where options came in, the O. How to pivot from being stuck to seeing possibilities. Because there was a point when I realized I could keep fighting these detours, or I could try to flow with them. I could see delay as proof that I wasn't enough, or I could see it as an invitation to grow from that. So I started asking different questions. If this door is closing, what is it protecting me from? If this chapter's paused, what is it preparing me for? And when I opened up my options, my world changed. Slowly, possibilities began to emerge. And then, of course, there's the W, the will, ending with small, grounded actions that I could take. It wasn't a grand plan of just reinventing the wheel, but really just choosing to show up again and again. I made a choice that if the road wasn't straight, I would just have to learn to walk the curves. I made a commitment to taking the next step, whatever that looked like. And even when the bigger picture wasn't clear, it would just be one simple email, a conversation, an opportunity that I hadn't explored before. And here we are in a podcast, a moment that has been born from all of these detours and delays. So think about ways that you can step out of your comfort zone. Try to think about the detours and how they don't cancel your dreams. They just clarify it. And the more you grow through the uncertainty and the ground that shifts beneath your feet, the steadier you'll become. It's like muscle memory. And look back on this a year from now or 6 months and just know that when you look at something all at once in its entirety, it can be a lot. So think of the GROW model as your friend. It's just a framework to help you navigate some of the mess so that it becomes more meaningful. It just breaks it down into the next step instead of all the steps. So I hope that's helpful. You know, lately I've been noticing how life has its own sat-nav. Not the one that we program, usually something quieter, one that is nudging or redirecting, letting me know that there's another way. I've often made my plans or set my timelines and mapped out a route, and then something shifts. A road closes, a detour appears, or the journey just recalculates. And over time, I've started to sense a kind of grace in that, receiving it more as a loving hand that's steering me around things I didn't even know lay ahead. There have been years when I have prayed hard for things to happen or for certain doors to open. I've clung onto paths because I was so sure they were right for me. But with a little distance, I can also see that there has been a protection and even a power in the pause, a wisdom in the not yet, and a softness by surrendering. It's strange how the detours we resist often become the places that can grow us the most. So, wherever you are right now, on a detour, waiting at a red light, or just wondering if you somehow missed the turn altogether, I hope you remember this. You're not late, you're not lost, and you're not alone. And I have to remind myself of these things too, because the recalculations, they can feel like delays. Sometimes the long way around can feel frustrating. But whatever you take from this episode, may some of my lemons help you make lemonade as you move through your week and fill up your cup. So that's a little slice of what's helped shape some of this space, and also helped shape me, because LemonAid was never just a podcast. It's a place to pause, to sit with the questions that we normally rush through. So I hope you'll come with me, and if this episode stirred something in you, please do share it with somebody who might need it more. You can also post your reflections and tag me on Instagram at jyoti.lemonade, or you can reach me through the jyotilemonade.com website and let me know your story. Please even feel free to leave a review